Welcome back, watchbangers, to another video on the Berlin Time channel. It's been quite a while. I'm glad that people are still looking at my videos, and I'm glad that maybe some new people are looking at my videos. But yeah, I have big ideas for the channel. It's just taking a bit, so just join me. As a quick little disclaimer, I'm not a professional. I don't have any idea. No professional education whatsoever. So you'll see pretty bad stuff from me. But yeah, I'm just doing my best. So there's also been a change in the filming and audio setup. Now I'm trying a little vertical setup from this side, and please apologize if the audio cuts out. Sometimes I forget to press the record button. And yeah, I used to have the filming setup on the side here so I can work naturally under my hands, but I'm just trying out some new things. So it is currently 4:20 here in Berlin, haha, 4:20. And yeah, I'll just start the video with this. So today's video will be about this vintage watch, this Kienzle watch I received from an acquaintance of mine. He just wanted me to take a look at it and service it because it's been quite a while since the last service, and the last watchmaker was not very helpful, as he put it. So yeah, the crown is really pretty banged up on the side. So that's already one mistake we'll have to fix. Now, a closer look at the watch reveals a pretty nice dial. It's a sunburst finished. There's a date. There's no big scratches on the crystal. There's milled indices and pretty nice black hands in my opinion. The case does have some wear and tear though. I think this is even gold. And when we, not like solid gold, but plated. And when we flip the watch, you can see that there's an inscription on the case back. It reads water protected stainless steel back, anti-magnetic, and there's, and shock proof. And there's also an inscription of a company, Zeppelin Caterpillar Metallwerke GmbH. So this is probably some commemorative case back, I'd say, or watch you received after working an X amount of years at a company. They like doing that. And when we take off the case back, you can see a pretty nice modern Ulmer design, in my opinion. It reminds me a lot of the ETA 2824 in some rudimentary elements. And you can see the rotor is turning nicely, so the reduction wheels, and there's no big like scratches on the bridges, so I definitely assume that there's no issue with the automatic work. And the balance is breathing pretty nicely. The spiral, the balance spring also looks pretty untouched, so I'm pretty happy about that. And when we go to the inside of the case back, you can see that it says that we have to remove the crystal to remove the actual movement, because when most watch movements, you know, as I'm showing here, have like a little big movement holder ring or some kind of attachment which goes from the movement into the case, so that, you know, the movement doesn't jump around the case or damage the dial and yada yada yada. And that is usually done with like screws, for example here, which should be there actually because the milling and the tap is there. But yeah, we'll just have to take off the crystal from the front so that the watch movement can pop out. And let's just lift the crystal a bit more and take off the glass on the front to reveal the actual dial and hands. As you can see, pretty nice condition. Just a bit of grime here and there, which I'll take off with some Q-tip. So yeah, and we'll start by, of course, taking off the hands so that we can pop off the dial. And I'm just using the presser tool with a little plastic sheet as protection. I swear to God, I'll get a hand lever set in the following videos because I'm so done with that tool. It's pretty bad in my opinion. Now the hands are all in order and just a bit grimy. I'll just give them a little slight clean letter, but they can go away. And I'm just going to show off this little small parts container. I updated, you know, the last version had this little foldable lid. Now we have a just press on lid, just a bit easier. And there's just a few less tolerances I have to be careful of when building these. Now let's label the container as always. I'm just putting the name up here, which is blurred. And then we'll put the model of this watch. This is the Kienzle. And yeah, so let's put this away. And I'll put the hands in the appropriate container there, down there, I'd say. And as I said before, now that everything's gone on the top, we can just flip the watch, take off the case smoothly in the back. And to remove the dial, we'll have to loosen these dial feet screws, which, you know, press against the feet of the dial, so they basically clamp into it. So let's remove these. And once that is done, we can just lift off the dial and reveal the pretty neat looking front side of the movement. There's the date complication. Oh, and there's the nice capsule plates, which I like. So yeah, let's put this into the actual movement holder. Now that we have audio, you hopefully can get some ASMR sounds as well if my editing and techniques are nice. So we'll start by taking off the biggest, clunkiest part of the watch, the rotor. And for that, we'll loosen the screw here, which is basically holding down some sort of, let's say, lock, this little metal plate. And this basically locks into a groove on the bottom of the rotor. And it just basically stops it from, coming off the post or jumping deeper on the post. And we'll just use some plastic tweezers to take this over a bit roughly. And I'll just release the tension, which is in the automatic work. So when I release, take off the bridge, the wheels don't go flying. And before I get to all of that, I'll just take care of the most important part of the watch, the balance wheel. And yeah, I'll just put this off as my very first thing because I don't want to expose it to any unnecessary risk. Oh, I think the roller just got caught there. Let's take this off. And while I'm at it, I can just take off the pallet fork bridge and the pallet fork so that, that's off already and there's no power in the watch. And there's no possibility for power being in the watch at all. So let's take off the bridge and the pallet fork if it wants to come with. There we go. And now let's move to the automatic bridge, which has 3 screws which need to be removed so that we can take that off. That's the second and the third. And what I did notice before is that the deburring little angle, this shines very nicely on these stones and holes. And let's just slightly, there we go, take that off. And there is a spring on the underside of the automatic bridge. And this is probably what, in my opinion, probably locks and releases the rotor. So, it can wind in one direction and unwind, not unwind, but it can just turn freely in the other. And this spring is a bit tricky. I'll just have to take this away without it flying off. And let's take this reduction wheel. I'd say that's a wheel to probably turn the power, and the last wheel is the wheel which basically winds up the barrel. And there's some sort of click on the side, and as you can see, there's a bunch of oil on this more gear train bridge, and it's pretty shocking the amount of it. It's just gunked in. Now, this is probably one of the big no-nos of this watch. Now we can remove the little capsule plate on the movement side first, and this basically just reduces the friction while letting the pivots run on the smallest amount of surface. And yeah, so we can move on to the automatic rotor bridge post, I'd say. So this is what the rotor is stuck on, and this is connected to the gear train bridge with these little 3 screws, which fit in these nicely organically milled grooves nicely. And when we turn the barrel, you can see that the gear train is moving nicely, so there's no big blockage. That's already a big good sign. And to remove the gear train bridge, we'll just loosen the other 3 screws on the side, take these off, and with that we can just lift this up. And let's see, there we go. And okay, so there's a bunch of more oil, especially on the top here. It's disgusting. The person probably oiled the gearless works wrong, I would suppose. So yeah, let's take off one of the winding wheels here. And I don't even know what this is. This is probably some sort of friction post. Take off the second stand in the middle. There we can have the second wheel, the escapement wheel, and take off the mainspring barrel on the side here. And when we took off the gear train bridge, I also flipped it around and found this little, I think this is a ratchet wheel, some sort of ratchet click wheel, which interacts with the ratchet wheel of the mainspring barrel. And finally, we can remove this little center bridge for the center wheel on the movement backside. Take off these 2 screws and lift up the bridge. This bridge would look pretty nicely. Would look pretty nice if we would give it a nice beveling, but I mean, it was probably a cheap movement. And you can't take this off because the center pinion, the cannon pinion, is still attached to the front side. So we'll take care of that in a second. I'll just take off the clutch from the back side here and the winding wheel as well. Oh, if it wants to come with, just gently take this out there. Perfect. And now we'll just flip around the watch. Usually you'd start the other way around, I think, but I still have to get used to the professional way, the things professionals do. So yeah, we'll take off this little spring which goes against the back side of the dial, the minute wheel, the arrow wheel, I'm sorry, and remove these two screws for the date lever jumper, this little cover plate. If it wants to come with me into the little box, okay, I guess not. And there we go. And we'll have to gently prod this out because there's a big spring on the... Oh, okay, well, at least nothing jumped away into oblivion. That's pretty nice. So let's take the little lever here and remove the spring carefully as well. There we go. And now we can come to the second cover plate, which basically covers the gearless works and the date wheel, the date ring, I'd say. So let's take off the screws there and remove that. Take off the cover plate and take off the ring. Whoop, there we go. And we'll move on to remove one of the, or the last cover plate, which covers the transmission wheels for the time setting, and take that off. Oh, okay. So that was there, and the wheels on the back side, which I'll take off as well here. And this basically allows, you know, us to transmit the turning power from the stem to the hour and minute wheels to set the time. Now, let's take off the cannon pinion here. And as you've seen, the center wheel fell off from the bottom. It's lying down there. I'll just lift it up. There we go. And let's take that off as well. Off to the box with you. And we'll take care of the actual... No, this is the back side of the gear tray. So the second gear cap jewel plate. And we can unscrew the setting bridge with the little spring and take off the screw. And let's try to lift this out. Oh, damn, the positioning spring is just broke off. Okay, I guess that's just being an old part. I mean, the spring is pretty thin, so I'll just take this off. I'll find a replacement somewhere. Yeah, so let's take the yoke out as well. The yoke just flew out because the spring went against it there. And now we can remove the yoke spring, which basically presses the yoke against the clutch and the clutch against the winding clutch. And this is a I think the cover plate and a transmission plate for the date wheel. And let's take the spring for the date wheel as well, because this is also very finicky. And this is the screw for the setting lever. I'll just unscrew this and do this off camera. And that's the setting lever, and the screw is still in there, just fell off. And that's the setting lever screw. So with that, the whole movement is done. You can see the marking. It says PUW 1361 Germany. PUW stands for Pforzheimer Uhrenwerke, and they're a very big movement manufacturer in Germany. Many years ago, they don't produce any watches anymore, but they did quite a while ago. And they also have these pretty cool shock settings. I'm not sure if this is the in-house one or the one from KIF, KIF. But I'll take off the cap jewel and the jewel cap here, and you can see the two parts. That's the little package which combine and basically allow the watch in combination with the spring to be shockproof, as the case back already advertised. And before doing the actual cleaning cycle, I'll do a little pre-cleaning. This is one of the gear train cap jewels, and I'm just using some cleaning wood here to just scrub the surface so that, you know, I'm getting the old grime off. And that's done. Let's take it away. And of course, we'll also have to look inside the barrel, dare a peek. And let's open the barrel here. It does have a, you know, one of those combined barrel and the barrel lid ratchet wheel combinations. So it's a bit tricky. I'm just grabbing under here and pressing down and up at the same time to like pry it open, and it did work. And let's turn it around. Oof, this is pretty grim. Yeah, so I'll also take this off. The underside is also in dire need of cleaning. So yeah, this will get a nice deep clean and re-lubrication as it's supposed to. So let's take this away, and let's start by taking the mainspring out of the barrel. Just lift this out, just, you know, the first coil, I'd say always. And then we'll take it into our hands and just help it unwind a bit, coil after coil, so that it's, you know, it's released in a controlled fashion, not that it just, you know, flies away. That would be horrible for the mainspring barrel and the spring itself. So I'm slowly unwinding this, and the end is always a bit harder, so careful there. And there we go. And yeah, similar to the cap jewels, I'll just take some cleaning wood here to scrape the insides of the barrel and the bottom, just to get any, you know, hard to remove gunk out of the barrel inside. And yeah, so with all the parts, you know, sorted and pre-cleaned, basically, we can load up the washing basket. So I'm having all the little parts containers here. I'm putting all the parts into the necessary containers. So now also sorted in a way so I don't, you know, mix up the screws, for example. But yeah, that's it. As usual, I hope you guys are having a lovely day, a lovely week, a lovely year. Here there's a little clip. I'm screwing the balance back onto the main plate so that, you know, I can put it into the cleaning machine, and not that I just put the balance there without any kind of support for the balance spring. That would be horrible. So yeah, I hope you guys had a nice year. It's slowly nearing an end. And yeah, if you guys have any questions or comments, as usual, you can always post them into the comment section below, or text me. I do get a surprising amount of emails, which I was pretty surprised about. You know, every once in a while I just get an email. I'm like, oh, cool. So yeah, we put all the parts in here, and make sure not to forget any screws, because sometimes I just forget a screw and I'm like, you know, looking into the box and like, oh, there's a few screws I didn't put in. Well, and I just wash them by hand. So the cleaning machine this time is outside on the balcony, because the cleaning fluids do really smell like ammonia, and that kind of stinks my place full. So I don't really want that nasty chemical smell in my place. So yeah, I have attached the basket here nice and tight, just to make sure that nothing flies off while I'm washing it, because I mean, it'll be controlled because all the little parts would be in the glass, but it'd still be stupid. Yeah, and I think I did have to go back once, and some watch I did not film, and there was a little small spring which slipped out of the cracks from the washing basket, and I had to like search the glasses, like holding them up to the light and trying to find the little spring. I did find it eventually, but yeah, it was pretty funny. So yeah, now I did a 1 cleaning cycle with 2 rinse cycles. The first rinse cycle does look like a cleaning cycle from the fluid color, but that's because it's just old. I will have to replace this just to make sure that the watch parts are super clean and don't have any residue from the nasty grimy cleaning fluid. So once that is done, I'll unhook that and then use my trusty dry method, the hair dryer. I must say, I mean, it's very practical. It's cheap, and it works. And I've not lost a part since, so it should be fine. And now, once everything's done, I've put the parts back into the smart parts container. And now I'm using the mainspring winder to wind up the mainspring again. So basically I'm using the winder, the arbor, and the holder, and I'm just gonna use the crank here to wind the spring back into its original like shape. And if you do this at home, you do have to, or also by hand, you do have to be careful in what direction you wind the spring, because if you wind it into the wrong direction, it'll just not be usable. You'll just chuck it and have to find a new spring, because you'll just basically destroy it. So now I'm unleasing releasing the power of the mainspring again by letting the arbor and the crank turn backwards against the power. And when I remove this, you can see that the mainspring is nice and tight, and the mainspring winder, it's coiled up. And then we'll just take the barrel here and gently press the spring back into the barrel. Boom. And it looks great. Looks almost new. Now I'll also add some lubrication just to be sure. This is some HP 1300 into the coils because I'm not sure how old the spring is. Maybe it doesn't have any special coating or so. And of course add some HP 1300 to the inside of the barrel arbor basically, which is also connected to the lid and the ratchet wheel at the same time. One of these integrated designs, which I mean are very practical from a production sense because they're cheap, but I think in terms of build quality, this is probably a bit on the lower end. And to test if everything's fine, I'm just going to turn the lid here to see if the spring is also, you know, showing some tension. And if it, you know, shows some tension and flicks back like here, it means that the hook from the arbor is hooking into the mainspring and everything is fine. Now I'm also oiling some of the friction points here. This is the barrel bearing. This is the bearing for one of the transmission wheels for the barrel power, and the center wheel of course was HP 1300. Not sure if I mentioned that already. And this is the thicker oil for parts which turn a bit less. And I'll start by putting in the center wheel, the bridge for the center wheel, and the screws, and just screw this down. 1, 2. So I'm not gonna do the actual screw, I'm gonna just tap the screw as a little magic effect, just so you know. And put it in the barrel again, and the, as I think I mentioned before, this friction spring kind of, which goes against the transmission wheel, like so. Then we put back the second wheel, the seconds wheel, where the, you know, the big second hand is turning on. And then the escapement wheel on the end of the gear train. Oh, it's a bit tricky, a bit finicky to get into its bearing, but I think that should be fine there. Okay. And on the underside of the gear train bridge, there was this, you know, click wheel, or click/ratchet wheel. I'm also lubricating the post for that, adding that in, and then I'm going to screw that down. And I will also add some lubrication to the spring and the teeth, because I don't want, after like, I don't know, another 60 years of use, I don't want there to be a little groove on the teeth from the steel spring rubbing against it. So yeah, put that back in, and then we can add on the gear train bridge onto the whole base plate. Let's see if all the pivots find their spot. Make sure that nothing breaks off. But I must say, in comparison to when I started, I'm barely breaking stuff nowadays, so I'm very happy. So I think that should be it. Let's turn the barrel and see if the gear, yep, all the wheels are turning, which means everything is in its place. I mean, the gear train is a bit wonky still. It does have a lot of friction, like a lot of end shake at the end, but I assume that's because the end cap jewels are missing from the gear train. So yeah, screw down the gear bridge with these 3 screws on the side. That's one. That's the second one. And I really like these polished, rounded screw heads. I mean, they're pretty nice. I mean, if they'd be blue, that would be even better, but everything's on a budget. And let's quickly turn this around to assemble the gearless works so we can wind the watch. I'm adding some lubrication for the setting lever there. I did forget to put the setting lever under the gear train bridge. You'll have to do that on your own. And as you can see, there it is with the setting lever screw. And then we can use the winding clutch and the clutch itself, and then add the stem through both of them, and everything's turning, which is nice. Now add some multi coat for the yoke post and drop that on there. And this basically allows, with the yoke spring, to slide the clutch back and forth, engaging in either the winding position or the time setting position, or, you know, date setting position. That basically just, the spring just offers the resistance for it. There we go. And then we can add back the, you know, the replaced setting lever bridge, or the setting bridge with the little spring there with the different positions. And as you can see, everything's working. There's different positions, everything's turning. It works fine. And when that's done, we can go on and finish the gear train. And for that, we need to reassemble and lubricate the cap jewels, which I was talking about before. And these are basically just 2 So on both sides, there's one little plate with 2 stones, and I think they cover the escape wheel and second wheel, and they basically, well, if you put them on, they will take away the excess end shake which these pivots have, and we'll see later when we test the gear train how free it moves. But on the front side, we'll put the first one. I'll put the screw on here, and you saw me put some 9010 onto the jewel caps there. On the other side, we have the second one. We put this on Jesus, on the on the gear train, and on the gear train bridge, I'm sorry, and then we will turn this and let's see how well it goes. And this is so much more smoother than before. I have a little comparison. We have the before on the left and the after on the right side, and as you can see on the left, the gear train, it's kind of like it hacks a bit. It's not as smooth as on the right side, and that's basically because of the capsules, the missing capsules. And we should not forget to lubricate the pallet fork as well with the special fat/oil mixture. And we can take that off, just lubricate the pallets, and be a bit careful when putting it back in not to smear the oil and lubrication everywhere, but it looks to be fine. It's moving nicely in this place. Put back the bridge, and I also do like the design of this bridge, this extended arm kind of form. And let's see, the pallets are also interlocking with the escapement wheel, which is pretty good, which means that there's no huge problem here probably, but we'll only see later on the Timegrapher. Now screw this down, and then I've lubricated the center, the seconds wheel basically, because I'm pretty sure that the automatic rotor bridge / post will cover it. And then I can add on the balance wheel to test out the escapement in a second and see if the watch is sticking. Okay, so the pivots are into place, but the watch is not running. I mean, it's probably because of the missing capsules for the shock packets. So we'll open the spring here. These are the KIF spring shock springs, I think. It's basically, and then it's basically all the same, only the spring looks a bit different. So I have the little packets here. I have the actual capsule, which I'll oil now. We just drop a little droplet of 9010 onto the flat surface. And then we have the little setting where the stone comes into. Just gently press that on there, make sure that it's all flat. And then we can just flip it around and check it out, and it looks pretty nice. And then we basically just take this and put it nicely into the groove there on the balance, and just close the spring up again. Just gently pull it down and hook the spring ends into the respective positions. And then we'll just do this on the backside as well. And as you'll see, the watch is already running on the backside, and that's because the friction on that position is way less because we have the actual shock cap installed, and that's why it's running already. Now both sides are running, the watch is ticking pretty healthy, to be honest. And we'll just put the post back on for the rotor. I wonder if the post is made out of something different than steel, maybe like, I don't know, tungsten or titanium, something which is harder than steel, because maybe if the rotor is always running on it, it does have a lot of wear, but who knows. Now with that done, we can also oil the automatic works. These are the lower bearings for the reduction and translation wheels. And once that is done, oh, I misoiled a bit there. Let's just take the oil away. Once that is done, I'm also going to lubricate the post there with some moly and add the first wheel, which basically translates the power from the rotor down one floor to the ratchet wheel. Then we have the 2 reduction wheels right there and there. And I think the little wheel in the middle is basically what allows the, I mean, it turns, maybe it turns the flow of power. So it might like wind the watch in both ways. I don't know, but it does have this little click thing on this side, and on the other side of the bridge, as we'll see in a second, there is a spring. So maybe it only winds in one direction. See this little spring there? Maybe this only allows the automatic works to wind in one direction and basically run freely in the other one. I'm not sure. But yeah, so we have that in. I'm just going to lubricate this spring as well here, just to be sure that there's no or less friction, and put the bridge carefully on there just to make sure that no pivots or wheels are kind of not in their position and might break. And let's add the screws, the 1, the 2, and the 3. And once that is done, we can just test the automatic works, to be honest. So put these 3 down and oil the bearings from the top as well. I'm using some HP 1300 here because these reduction wheels, they don't turn too fast in my opinion. So yeah, we'll pop on the rotor, slide that onto the post, and oh, it's already pretty turnable. And to lock it in place, we'll just slide this little locking steel plate in its place and screw this down. This basically also stops the rotor from just popping off the post. And let's keep this nice and tight. And when we turn it, you can see that the rotor is turning nicely and the wheels below it in the automatic bridge are also turning, which means that the power is moving into the barrel. So we turn the watch, and now we can work on the one complication this has, the date function. We put the date spring in for the big date corrector, or date jumper I'd say, the big date jumper itself, and cover this up with the date jumper plate. And this also just stops the jumper from moving, and as you can see, it's all turning and working with each other. And now I'm lubricating the this is the setting system. So this, not the setting system per se, but the time setting system. This basically translates the power from the stem to the hour and minute wheel, the cannon pinion, which I'm putting on right now, the cannon pinion here. And this is the little translation wheel, and these basically allow the watch to set the time correctly with the right translation. Now I'm covering the translation wheel with this little plate, the cover plate, so that when we do try to set the time, that this translation wheel does not jump out, for example, you know? And now I'm also lubricating the date corrector, adding in the actual date ring with the printed dates, and locking this, well, not locking it in place, but just making sure it's covered by this little date ring plate. There's a second one later to maximize the rigidity of the system, but put these little 2 screws in there and just use the magic screwing stick. Voila. And these 2 are screwed in, as you can see. And then I'll lubricate the post for the date lever, and this basically, I'd say, locks the date in place and allows it to jump in a way. Now it's got this little arm here, which I'm aligning perfectly and oiling on this one side, and then on the other side of this arm we'll put in the date lever spring, and this basically presses the lever against the date ring, locking it in place. And when the date does change, it allows the date to kind of switch over to the next thing and not move forwards and backwards, for example. I'm using a second little pen to make sure that the spring is in place, and once that's done, I'm covering up with the plate. And this is the second plate I was talking about, which basically not only prevents the spring and the lever from jumping off once the date has switched, but also covers the date ring a bit. And the magic stick, as always, comes in handy here. Now I'm also just lubricating the cannon pinion for the mid-hour wheel, which I'm putting on there. And with that, the whole front side is done, and I can just put back the dial onto the movement. So make sure that the dial feet find their bores, and there we go. Just press this down slightly. Okay, that looks good. Okay, nice and tight. Right, and with that done, I'll just tighten the screws for the dial feet. Not too tight though, because they can snap, or they can basically manipulate the surface of the dial. So just slightly screwed that down before I went on to reattach the hands. And these hands, while they do look very sleek, they're very difficult to position perfectly because of their very thin nature. You can see that if, let's say, the 12-hour, minute, and hour hand aren't aligned super, you can see the difference very easily. So I really did my best here. And as you can see, the seconds hand got attached really nicely. It even ran immediately. And I'm just quickly cleaning up the dial because I just had the impression it was a bit dirty. Now I'm just filling up the ultrasonic bath here. I'm not sure if I showed this before, but I'm just adding water and some ultrasonic detergent. And I'm throwing in the case and the case back into the ultrasonic bath just to make sure that it's as clean as possible. And starting it now. I did put the volume down a bit because it does destroy your ears. But once this is done, I'm just taking out. I'm gonna dry this off and maybe just rinse it with some water before we can case up the watch again. But before we come to that, I'm just gonna polish the crystal a bit because, as you can see, it is pretty scratched up. And It does not have a very big gash or a big crack, so I decided to polish it. I'm just using some polywash. And this is like a sort of abrasive, a very fine abrasive, which you use to polish up acrylic surfaces. And since this is just a plastic crystal, I can use it on this. And I'm using a handheld Dremel here, or like a Dremel similar tool, to just spread and press this abrasive into the crystal surface. And this basically just ensures that I can achieve a pretty glossy finish in the end. And I'm just having a little time lapse here for you guys. And as you can see, I'm just really trying to get every corner as even as possible. And sometimes, you know, concentrating on more stronger scratches. But yeah, with that, the crystal was overhauled, so to say, and I can drop the moved one back into the case. And then with our refurbished crystal, I can just press this back on and cover the dial. And it's a bit tricky to get this pressed in. Okay, I'll just press a bit harder then. There we go. Slowly, I can hear it popping into place from time to time. Ah, there. Okay, all right. And with that done, we need to take care of this little bent crown tube here, or the tube from the crown. And I have this little replacement crown or a set which I'm gonna choose from. And for that, I first need to unscrew the crown. I'm just gonna put this stem into a pin vise, tighten this. It's not tight enough, so that I can just really unscrew the crown. There we go. I mean, it's not going to be an original crown, but it looks similar, and that's what the guy wanted. So, take this off, and I think the stem is a bit too long. Yeah, if you look at this, the tube is a bit too long. So yeah, I'll have to cut this to the appropriate length so that it doesn't stick out too much or scratch the case too much. I'm just going to use some pliers and just roughly cut this off. There we go. I'm going to mix up some abrasive, not abrasive, some this is like a glue, like a double glue, which really smells. Yeah, but I have this looking all nice and sticky, and I'll use this to just put some on the tip where the crown gets screwed on. I'll take some off here, and I'll have to take some on later. And with that, just screw on the crown. Sorry for the sharpness or the non-sharpness of the video. And the rest glue, the leftover glue, I'll just take off with some wood, because you don't need that in the watch. And yeah, once that's cleaned, I'll just press this back into the watch case, make sure that everything's engaging, and I can put on the Timegrapher. Let's see what it says. And the first result is not that good. I have a too low amplitude. This is way too low. And the rate's okay. The beat error is also fine, but I really have to do something with the amplitude. And after some re-regulation, I found the mistake. It was just the balance spring was a bit stuck between the regulating pins. And that's why the amplitude was horrible. So I just opened them up. And as you can see, I have almost 70 degrees more amplitude, which is super. 260 degrees. It's nice. The rate is pretty stable. And there's a very low beat error, which is nice. And as you can see, the line as well is also pretty horizontal, so there's no big differences in the line. So I'm glad. I'm pretty satisfied. And I'll just mark the back of the case back, or the inside, with the date. So 2023, this was serviced in Berlin. Where else? Let's close the pen and use this to close up the watch finally for the next 4 years, hopefully, or however long the next service will be. So that's pressed on, and with that, the watch is done. All right, that was a nice little video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I'm not very confident though, because the Timegrapher did sometimes bug out with the reading. So I'm just gonna attach this to a NATO strap and just wear it to see how it wears on the hand, because you know the real life practical experience is always a bit different. And that way I can also test out the automatic works at the same time. So just have this little black NATO strap, and I'll just wear it for a few days. And yeah, if nothing else comes up, that's done. Okay, I must say, what's wrong with my skin there? Strange. Enjoy the B-roll. And with that, watchbangers, another video has come to an end. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any questions, comments, criticism, suggestions, please let me know. Write me. I love getting fan mail. And yeah, I'm just trying out a few new things with the videos. I'm editing a bit more. But yeah, we'll just have to see. I hope you guys are enjoying it. Yeah, have fun. Keep on banging, watchbangers, and see you next time. Bye bye.